What if one cruel joke about your husband's private life could cost you everything? The night the process server handed me those papers at the charity gala, I realized too late that the story everyone would remember wasn't mine. The living room still smelled like vanilla cake and cheap wine when I made the joke that would destroy my marriage. Our daughter Nella's seventh birthday party had wound down to just the core group: Clara, Greg, my sister in law Mara, and a few other couples sprawled across our sectional sofa. Simon was in the kitchen, methodically scraping frosting off plates with that same quiet precision he brought to everything. God, even the way he cleaned annoyed me. No passion, no fire, just endless, boring efficiency. You know what Simon told me last week? I said, swirling the last drops of Pinot Grigio in my glass. The wine had loosened my tongue, and Clara was giving me that encouraging look she always wore when gossip was about to spill. What? Clara leaned forward, phone casually positioned in her lap. He actually asked me to schedule our intimate time. Like, literally put it on the calendar. I laughed, but it came out sharper than I intended. Can you imagine? Honey, I've got you penciled in for Thursday at 9:15, right after I finish organizing my sock drawer. The room went quiet for a beat too long. Greg shifted uncomfortably, and Mara's smile looked frozen. That's specific, Clara said, and I caught the blue glow of her phone screen as she typed something. Oh, it gets better, I continued, emboldened by the attention. Last month, he actually researched performance optimization techniques online. I found the browser history. My husband, my 35-year-old husband, was Googling stamina tips like some teenager. The clink of a plate hitting the counter echoed from the kitchen. Simon had gone very still. Tamsin, Mara said quietly, maybe we should... What? It's not like it's a secret. The man schedules romance like a dental appointment and wonders why I'm not exactly enthusiastic. I gestured vaguely with my wine glass. I mean, you all know Simon, sweet guy, but about as spontaneous as a tax audit. Clara's fingers were moving rapidly across her phone screen now. Girl, you're terrible, she said, but she was grinning. From the kitchen came the sound of running water, but I could feel Simon listening. Good. Maybe a little public embarrassment would motivate him to actually try for once. The worst part, I said, lowering my voice to a stage whisper, is that he keeps a little notebook. I swear to God, he tracks everything. Duration, frequency, even rates the experience on some kind of scale. Who does that? Wait, seriously? This from Jake, Clara's husband, who looked equal parts horrified and fascinated. Dead serious. I found it in his nightstand. Color-coded tabs and everything. My sex life has been turned into a spreadsheet. The water shut off abruptly in the kitchen. Greg cleared his throat. Maybe we should talk about something else. Why? Because Simon can't handle a little honesty? I was on a roll now, feeding off Clara's encouraging nods and the shocked expressions around me. Look, I love the guy, but let's be real. Some men are tigers and some men are, well, house cats. Simon's definitely a house cat. My phone buzzed with a text notification. Then another. Clara was typing something in our group chat, probably sharing this conversation in real time with people who weren't even here. You might want to check your messages, Clara said with a sly smile. I glanced at my phone and saw our group chat lighting up with laughing emojis and fire symbols. Someone had already screenshot my comments and shared them in the larger friend network. Within minutes, my private complaints about Simon's bedroom performance would be circulating among dozens of our mutual acquaintances. But in that moment, riding high on wine and attention, I didn't care. If anything, I felt validated. Finally, people understood what I was dealing with. Simon appeared in the doorway, dish towel in his hands, face carefully neutral. Anyone need more coffee? He asked, as if he hadn't heard every word. We're good, I said, not meeting his eyes. The party broke up shortly after that, with awkward hugs and promises to get together soon. Claire squeezed my hand as she left. You're hilarious, she whispered. That group chat is going to be talking about this for weeks. After everyone left, Simon and I cleaned up in silence. He folded napkins with mechanical precision while I loaded the dishwasher, both of us pretending the elephant wasn't in the room. Good party, he finally said. Mm-hmm. Nella seemed happy. She did. We moved around each other like polite strangers, and I told myself this was normal. This was just how marriages worked after 7 years. The passion fades, the excitement dies, and you're left with someone who schedules intimacy like a business meeting. That night, as I scrolled through the group chat responses to Clara's play-by-play of my Simon Roast session, I felt a little thrill of vindication. Finally, someone understood my frustration. Finally, I wasn't alone in this beige marriage. I had no idea that Simon was in his home office, printing out screenshots of every message. Simon worked the morning shift at Riverside Family Clinic, manning the reception desk with the same methodical attention to detail that drove me crazy at home. But what I didn't know, what I was too busy complaining about to notice, was that his side gig analyzing appointment patterns for the clinic's efficiency reports had taught him to spot discrepancies in scheduling data, including mine. 3 days after Nella's party, while I was at what I told him was a therapy session, Simon sat in the clinic's records room during his lunch break, staring at a printout that made his stomach clench. Our shared Google Calendar showed my Dr. Morrison therapy appointments every Tuesday and Thursday from 2 to 4 p.m. But Simon had cross-referenced this with our phone plan's location data, and the results were damning. My phone hadn't been anywhere near Dr. Morrison's office on Elm Street during those appointments. Instead, the GPS coordinates consistently placed me at the Fairfield Inn on Route 9, exactly 2.3 miles from Leo's Fitness, where I'd been going for wellness coaching sessions. Simon pulled up our joint checking account on his laptop. There they were, $200 cash withdrawals every Tuesday and Thursday, always around 1:30 p.m. The ATM receipts showed transactions at the First National branch right next to the hotel. His hands were steady as he printed everything out, but his jaw was tight. 7 years of marriage, and I was treating him like an idiot. The hotel Wi-Fi logs were the final piece. Simon's cousin worked in IT at the Fairfield Inn, and a casual conversation about cybersecurity had yielded some interesting information about their guest network access times. My phone's MAC address, which Simon had noted from our home router logs, appeared in the hotel's system every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon for the past 6 weeks. But Simon wasn't done collecting evidence. He was methodical by nature, and if this was heading where he thought it was, he wanted an airtight case. That evening, I came home glowing with what I claimed was therapeutic breakthrough energy. Dr. Morrison says I'm making real progress, I announced, dropping my purse by the door. She thinks my anxiety stems from feeling unheard in my primary relationships. Simon looked up from helping Nella with her homework. That's great, honey. What specific techniques is she teaching you? The question caught me off guard. Oh, mindfulness stuff, breathing exercises, cognitive behavioral therapy, or more psychodynamic? I waved dismissively. I don't really get into the technical terms. The important thing is I'm feeling more empowered. Simon nodded and turned back to Nella's math worksheet, but I caught him glancing at his phone. Later, I'd learned he was photographing my purse, which still had the hotel keycard tucked into the side pocket, the one I'd forgotten to throw away. The next morning, after I left for work, Simon called Dr. Morrison's office. Hi, this is Simon Harker. I wanted to schedule a session for myself, but I wanted to make sure it wouldn't conflict with my wife Tamsin's appointments. Could you tell me what time she usually comes in? The receptionist was apologetic but confused. I'm sorry, Mr. Harker, but we don't have anyone by that name in our system. Are you sure she's seeing Dr. Morrison? Maybe she's using her maiden name, Tamsin Virali? No, sir. No Tamsin in our appointment book at all. Simon thanked her and hung up. He sat in his car outside the clinic for 10 minutes, processing what he'd just confirmed. Then, he drove to the Fairfield Inn. The desk clerk was young and chatty, especially when Simon explained he was trying to plan a surprise for his wife, who'd been working so hard on her wellness journey. Oh, the pretty brunette who comes in Tuesdays and Thursdays. She seems really nice. Always meets that trainer guy in the lobby. Trainer guy? Yeah, tall, dark hair, really fit. They usually head up to the 3rd floor together. Sweet that she's so dedicated to her health, Simon's hands were perfectly steady as he filled out a hotel registration card, claiming he wanted to book the same type of room for their anniversary. The clerk, eager to help, pulled up the recent booking history. Looks like she usually gets room 312. Nice choice. It's got a great view of the courtyard. That afternoon, Simon sat in his car in the hotel parking lot and waited. At 1:47 p.m., my Honda Civic pulled in. At 1:52 p.m., a red Jeep Wrangler followed. I emerged from my car, looking around nervously. The man from the Jeep was tall, muscular, with the kind of easy confidence that Simon had never possessed. Leo Marchant. I'd mentioned him casually over dinner a few times. My new trainer, so motivational, really helping me find my strength. Simon watched them embrace in the parking lot, watched Leo's hand linger on my lower back as we walked toward the hotel entrance. He took pictures with his phone, noting the timestamp, the license plate numbers, the body language that spoke of intimacy far beyond a professional relationship. Then, he drove home and added everything to his growing file. That night, as I chattered about my breakthrough session with Dr. Morrison, Simon nodded and asked supportive questions. He even suggested we celebrate my progress with dinner at our favorite restaurant. "You're being so sweet," I said, surprised by his attentiveness. "I just want you to be happy," Simon replied. And he meant it in a way. He wanted me to be happy, somewhere far away from him, with someone who deserved my particular brand of cruelty. But first, he was going to make sure everyone knew exactly who I really was. In his home office that night, Simon created a new folder on his laptop. Evidence collection, TVH misconduct. He was a clinic receptionist, but he'd learned a thing or two about documentation standards from the medical malpractice cases that occasionally crossed his desk. Every piece of evidence was dated, time-stamped, and cross-referenced. Hotel receipts, ATM withdrawals, GPS data, witness statements, even the group chat screenshots from Nella's birthday party, where I'd humiliated him in front of our friends. Simon had always been thorough. Now, that thoroughness was going to serve a very specific purpose. Leo Marchant was everything Simon wasn't. 6'2" with the kind of sculpted physique that came from treating your body like a temple instead of a vehicle for getting through the day. At 29, he had the easy confidence of someone who'd never doubted his own appeal. And his Instagram account was a carefully curated shrine to wellness culture and motivational quotes. "Your husband doesn't appreciate what he has," Leo murmured against my neck as we lay tangled in the hotel sheets. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I'd told Simon I had back-to-back therapy sessions. "Simon's a good man," I said automatically, though the words felt hollow. "He's just predictable." "Predictable is another word for boring," Leo said, tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. "You deserve someone who sees your fire, Tamsin. Someone who matches your energy." This was exactly what I needed to hear. For months, I'd felt invisible in my own marriage, reduced to a supporting character in Simon's orderly, passionless existence. Leo made me feel alive again, desired in a way that had nothing to do with scheduled intimacy or performance tracking. "I should go," I said, but I didn't move from his arms. "Stay a little longer. Tell me more about what you're thinking." So I did. I told him about Simon's notebooks, his color-coded approach to romance, his complete inability to understand that sometimes a woman wanted to be swept away, not penciled in. Leo listened with the kind of focused attention that made me feel like the most fascinating woman in the world. "Have you thought about couples therapy?" he asked. "Real therapy, I mean." I laughed bitterly. Simon would love that. Another opportunity to analyze and optimize our relationship. He'd probably bring charts. What about just being honest with him about what you need? "I've tried, but you can't teach passion, Leo. Either someone has it or they don't." Simon's idea of spontaneity is suggesting we order pizza instead of cooking dinner. Leo's phone buzzed with a client reminder, and reality crashed back in. I was a married woman lying naked in a hotel room, complaining about my husband to my lover. When had I become this person? But as I got dressed, watching Leo pull on his gym clothes with unconscious grace, I pushed the guilt aside. I deserved this. I deserved to feel wanted, to feel alive. Simon had turned our marriage into a beige, joyless routine, and if he couldn't give me what I needed, I'd find it elsewhere. "Same time Tuesday?" Leo asked, kissing me goodbye. "Definitely." I stopped at the ATM on my way home, withdrawing another $200 from our joint account. Simon never questioned these transactions. He probably assumed they were for groceries or gas. His trusting nature, which had once seemed sweet, now felt like willful blindness. At home, I found Simon helping Nella with a science project about the solar system. They were bent over construction paper and glitter, completely absorbed in creating Saturn's rings. How was therapy? Simon asked without looking up. Productive, I said. And it wasn't entirely a lie. My sessions with Leo were definitely productive, just not in the way Simon imagined. Dr. Morrison helping with the anxiety? She's very hands-on in her approach. Simon nodded, still focused on helping Nella position Jupiter correctly. That's good. I'm proud of you for prioritizing your mental health. The casual kindness in his voice made something twist in my chest, but I pushed it down. This was exactly the problem. Simon's default mode was supportive and understanding, but where was the passion? Where was the man who would fight for his marriage? Who would demand to know why his wife seemed distant and distracted? Later that evening, after Nella was in bed, I found Simon in his home office, working on some kind of spreadsheet. What's that? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. Just organizing some data for the clinic, appointment patterns, efficiency metrics. He gestured at the screen, which was covered in columns of numbers and color-coded cells. You love your patterns, don't you? I said, and there was more edge in my voice than I'd intended. Simon looked up, studying my face. Is everything okay? Fine, just, do you ever get tired of reducing everything to data points? I find patterns helpful. They help me understand how things work, why they break down, how to fix them. What if some things can't be fixed with spreadsheets, Simon? He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers still on the keyboard. Are we talking about something specific here? This was my opening. I could have been honest, could have told him about the loneliness, the feeling of being taken for granted, the way our marriage had become a series of pleasant, passionless routines. Instead, I deflected. Just thinking out loud. Don't mind me. I kissed the top of his head and went to take a shower, washing away the lingering scent of Leo's cologne and hotel soap. In the mirror, I looked like the same person I'd always been, but something fundamental had shifted. I was living a double life now, and the deception was becoming as addictive as the affair itself. What I didn't know was that Simon had been tracking more than just clinic appointment patterns. The spreadsheet on his screen wasn't about work efficiency, it was about me. Every unexplained absence, every cash withdrawal, every time I'd claimed to be somewhere I wasn't. And the pattern that was emerging painted a very clear picture of exactly what kind of therapy I was really getting. But Simon was patient. He'd spent years learning to read data, to wait for complete information before drawing conclusions. He wouldn't confront me until he had everything he needed to prove his case, beyond any shadow of doubt. In the meantime, he'd keep playing the role of the trusting, supportive husband, while methodically building the evidence that would eventually destroy me. Dr. Patricia Reeves had been Simon's physician for 8 years, and she'd never seen him look as tired as he did sitting in her office on a gray Tuesday morning in October. I've been having some performance issues, Simon said, staring at his hands. My wife thinks it's psychological, but I wanted to rule out any medical causes. Dr. Reeves nodded professionally. That's smart. There are many physical factors that can affect sexual function. Tell me about your symptoms. What followed was the most honest conversation Simon had had with anyone in months. He described the exhaustion, the anxiety, the way his body seemed to shut down whenever he tried to be intimate with me. He talked about the insomnia, the constant knot in his stomach, the feeling that he was failing at something fundamental. When did these symptoms start? Dr. Reeves asked, making notes. About 3 months ago, maybe 4. Any major life changes? Stress at work? Relationship issues? Simon hesitated. My wife has been critical. She says I'm not spontaneous enough, not passionate enough. She's been sharing some pretty personal details about our marriage with her friends. Dr. Reeves looked up from her notepad. Sharing details how? Group texts, social media. She made jokes about my performance at our daughter's birthday party, in front of everyone we know. I see. And how did that make you feel? Humiliated. Angry. But mostly just broken. Simon's voice cracked slightly. I love my wife, but I feel like I'm constantly being evaluated and found wanting. It's hard to be intimate with someone when you know they're going to critique your performance afterward. Dr. Reeves set down her pen. Simon, What you're describing sounds like performance anxiety stemming from emotional abuse. The symptoms you're experiencing, erectile dysfunction, insomnia, digestive issues, these are classic stress responses to psychological trauma. Trauma seems like a strong word. Public humiliation about intimate matters, constant criticism, emotional manipulation, these are forms of psychological abuse. Your body is responding to chronic stress by shutting down non essential functions, including sexual response. She ran a complete physical exam, ordered blood work, and scheduled a follow up appointment. But more importantly, she documented everything in Simon's medical record with timestamps and detailed notes about the correlation between his symptoms and my behavior. I want you to consider counseling, she said as Simon got dressed. Not couples therapy, individual therapy to help you process what you're going through. My wife is already in therapy, Simon said. She says it's helping her feel more empowered. Dr. Reeves raised an eyebrow. What kind of therapy? I'm not sure. She's pretty vague about the details. That afternoon, Dr. Reeves made a note to herself to research local therapists named Morrison. As a physician, she was familiar with most of the mental health practitioners in the area, and something about Simon's story didn't add up. Meanwhile, I was at the Fairfield Inn, telling Leo about my frustrating morning. Simon's been acting weird lately, I said, curled up against his chest. Quiet, but like he's watching me, it's creepy. Maybe he suspects something, Leo said, running his fingers through my hair. Simon, please. The man couldn't find a clue if it was color-coded and filed alphabetically. I laughed, but there was an edge to it. Besides, he's too passive to actually confront anyone about anything. He'd rather just suffer in silence and make detailed notes about his suffering. You talk about him like you hate him. I don't hate him, I'm tired of being married to someone who treats life like a research project. You know what he did last week? He asked me to rate our date night on a scale of 1 to 10 so he could optimize future experiences. Leo laughed, but it sounded forced. That's pretty intense. It's pathetic. I married a man, not a customer service survey. What I didn't know was that Simon had started recording our conversations. Not illegally. He'd researched the wiretapping laws carefully. But in our home state, only one party needed to consent to recording, and Simon was definitely consenting. The conversation about rating our date night had never happened. I was creating fictional examples of Simon's supposed inadequacies to justify my affair, and now I was doing it on record. That evening, Simon sat in Dr. Reeves's office for his follow-up appointment, blood work results in hand. Everything looks normal physically, she said. Testosterone levels are actually above average for your age. This confirms what I suspected. Your symptoms are stress-related. So it's all in my head? No, Simon. Psychological trauma causes real physical symptoms. What your wife is doing to you, the public humiliation, the constant criticism, it's abuse. Your body is protecting you the only way it knows how. Dr. Reeves pulled out a form. I'm going to document this officially. If you ever need medical evidence of the impact this situation is having on your health, you'll have it. She wrote a detailed report describing Simon's symptoms, their timeline, and their clear correlation with my increasingly abusive behavior. She noted the performance anxiety, the sleep disruption, and the digestive issues that had all started around the time I began my affair. Have you considered that your wife might be projecting? Dr. Reeves asked. Sometimes when people are being unfaithful, they become hypercritical of their partners to justify their own behavior. Simon was quiet for a long moment. She's been going to therapy twice a week. Says she's working on feeling more empowered. What's her therapist's name? Dr. Morrison. Dr. Reeves frowned. I don't know any Dr. Morrison in the area, and I know most of the therapists our patients see. That night, Simon added Dr. Reeves's report to his growing file. Medical documentation that my behavior was causing him genuine psychological and physical harm, evidence that the performance issues I mocked so publicly were actually symptoms of the abuse I was inflicting. But he still wasn't ready to confront me. Not yet. He wanted to see just how far I'd go with my lies, how deep I'd dig my own grave before he finally handed me the shovel. The answer, as it turned out, was much deeper than either of us could have imagined. The Riverside Children's Hospital Charity Gala was the social event of the year, held at the Grand Ballroom downtown, with all the pomp and circumstance that came with a $500 per plate fundraiser. I'd been looking forward to it for weeks, a chance to dress up, be seen, and enjoy an evening out that had nothing to do with Simon's methodical approach to entertainment. I wore a black cocktail dress that Leo had complimented during one of our hotel room sessions, and I'd gotten my hair done that afternoon at the salon where Clara worked part-time. She'd been full of gossip about the other attendees, speculating about who would be there and what drama might unfold. "You look amazing," she said, putting the finishing touches on my updo. "Simon's going to die when he sees you." "Simon's not coming," I said. "He had to work late at the clinic. Some kind of emergency with their computer system." This was a lie. Simon had offered to attend with me, but I'd told him the tickets were too expensive and we should save our money. What I didn't tell him was that Leo would be there. He'd bought a ticket after I mentioned the event, claiming he wanted to support local children's charities. The ballroom was spectacular, all crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths, with the city's elite mingling over cocktails and silent auction items. I found Leo near the bar, looking devastatingly handsome in a dark suit that emphasized his athletic build. "You're stunning," he murmured, kissing my cheek in greeting. "You clean up pretty well yourself," I replied, allowing myself to bask in his attention. We weren't seated together. That would have been too obvious. But Leo was at a table 3 seats away from mine, close enough that we could exchange meaningful looks throughout the evening. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years, desired and appreciated by a man who saw me as more than just a wife and mother to be managed and optimized. The dinner was excellent, the speeches appropriately moving, and I was having the time of my life. Claire was at my table, along with several other couples from our social circle, and the conversation flowed easily. I may have had one too many glasses of wine, because I found myself sharing more details about my wellness journey than I'd intended. "It's amazing what good coaching can do," I said, glancing toward Leo's table. "I've learned so much about what I really need, what I deserve." "That's wonderful," said Janet Morrison, whose husband worked with Simon at the clinic. "Simon must be so proud of your progress." "Simon's very supportive," I said carefully, "though I think sometimes he wishes I was still the same passive person I used to be." The conversation moved on to other topics, but I caught Clara typing something on her phone under the table, probably updating the group chat with live commentary from the gala. I'd become something of a celebrity in our friend network since the birthday party incident, the woman brave enough to speak honestly about her marriage's shortcomings. It was during the silent auction closing that everything went sideways. I was standing near Leo's table, pretending to examine the bidding sheet for a weekend spa package, when a man in a gray suit approached me. "Tamsin Virali Harker," he said. "Yes? You've been served." He handed me a thick manila envelope and walked away before I could respond. The ballroom seemed to go quiet around me, though I knew that was impossible. Conversations continued, glasses clinked, the auctioneer's voice droned on, but all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears as I stared at the envelope in my hands. "What is that?" Claire appeared at my elbow, eyes wide with curiosity and concern. "I don't know," I said, but my hands were shaking as I opened the envelope. The first document was a summons for civil court. The second was a complaint for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and emotional cruelty. The third was a restraining order requiring me to stay away from Simon's workplace and limiting my access to our joint accounts. But it was the fourth document that made my knees weak. A detailed defamation lawsuit, with exhibits that included screenshots of every group chat message I'd ever sent about Simon, time-stamped records of my lies about therapy appointments, and bank records showing my cash withdrawals for hotel rooms. "Oh my God," Clara whispered, reading over my shoulder. "Tamsin, what is this?" I looked up to find Leo's table empty. He'd vanished sometime during the commotion, leaving behind only a half-finished plate and a water glass with lipstick stains that weren't mine. My phone started buzzing with text messages, then emails. Screenshots from the legal documents were already circulating among our friends, shared by someone who'd managed to photograph them over my shoulder. The worst part was the final page of the defamation complaint. A list of witnesses who'd agreed to testify about my pattern of publicly humiliating Simon. Clara's name was on the list, So was Greg's and Janet Morrison's and half a dozen other people I considered friends. I have to go, I said, stuffing the papers back into the envelope. Tamsin, wait. But I was already pushing through the crowd toward the exit, my face burning with humiliation and rage. How dare Simon do this to me here, in front of everyone we knew? How dare he turn my moment of happiness into a public spectacle? In the parking garage, I called his cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried the house phone, same thing. When I finally got home, Simon's car wasn't in the driveway and the lights were off. I let myself in with my key, but something was wrong. The house felt different, emptier. Simon's clothes were gone from our bedroom closet. His toiletries were missing from the bathroom. Even his coffee mug was absent from the kitchen counter. On the dining room table was a single sheet of paper, a temporary custody agreement, giving Simon primary physical custody of Nella, with my visitation limited to supervised visits, pending the outcome of the court proceedings. I sank into a chair, still wearing my black cocktail dress, still smelling like Leo's cologne, and tried to process what had just happened. In the space of 2 hours, I'd gone from feeling like the most desirable woman in the room to discovering that my husband had systematically dismantled my entire life. And the most terrifying part was that I had no idea how much evidence he actually had, or how long he'd been collecting it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your Uber driver Leo has canceled your ride. Please find alternative transportation. Even my affair partner had abandoned me. I was completely, utterly alone.